Intro. It delays the timer. Okay. Hi, everybody. How are we getting on? We are back with the latest installment of the Goose podcast. I think this is episode 7 out of 10 of this series. And with me today is Andy McManagan. I always will butcher surnames of the Republic of Work. So, Andy, if you'd like to introduce yourself and explain who you are and what you do.
Perfect. Well, look, first of all, you nailed the last name, so fair play to you. In my last job now, my old boss would have struggled with this, but yeah. So I'm the program associate at Republic of Work, and really what that means is, we run programs sort of centered around, startups and I suppose specific supports that go beyond the co-working space. And one of those programs is the NDRC, which is kind of what I'm leading at the moment out of Republic of Work. So to give you kind of a full picture, Republic of Work would be, it's predominantly a co-working space. So we'd have the likes of, remote workers, consultants, venture capitalists. We'd have esports inside the building. But the programs we actually run ourselves, they're usually startup centric, and they sort of bring founders and startups through a structured, I suppose, support system that will really take them from A to B at different stages of their journey as well.
Well, that's really cool. I suppose the Republic of Work is essentially at its core a co-working space. I think, look, as people have obviously gathered by now, this is my bedroom. I live, work, and breathe everything in my bedroom. So it kind of becomes like a little prison cell at times, where you could be here for like 23 hours a day and just get out for your hour of exercise. So spaces like this are obviously really, really cool for people, I suppose, in remote jobs who want to actually, maybe don't have the facilities at home to work easy, or just want to change the environment, because you have a beautiful space in the city center of Cork, and people can essentially rent desks and get to meet other amazing, whether that's people who are in day jobs, or, as you said, the startups and VCs and other people who'd be renting the space. So yeah, definitely check it out. What kind of, just out of curiosity, so if someone, like, let's say I'm looking to come down, I'm going down to Cork for a few days, how do I go about booking a space, and what kind of costs are there?
Yeah, so look, we do have our, we obviously have our website. We have we're also listed on what's called the Connected Hubs, sort of what the website there as well. And the Connected Hubs is sort of a repository for all different co-working spaces in Ireland. But ultimately, like, we're quite relaxed here in this building, like, despite kind of maybe the kind of fancy image people have of us. I think one of the best ways to figure out if you want to work out of this space for a couple of days is just pick up the phone and ring. Like, if you've ever been in the building, you'd always see the staff members floating around the lounge, just kind of shooting the breeze, and really we definitely try to make sure that we're welcoming to everyone who engages with us. And you'll definitely notice that if you kind of pick up the phone and just ring reception, and just whatever ask you have, and we'll see if we can accommodate it. I suppose that's always the interesting thing about co-working spaces. It's that we don't have this very stringent set of services. If there's value that we can provide, it's always worth just ringing up and seeing, can we provide that value, because there's a whole load of different things that you can actually book inside Republic of Work. Like, there's different tiers of membership, like the hot desking space, where you can kind of just sit in a communal work area with other kind of co-workers. But then there's also, the likes of our meeting rooms. If you have a fully remote team and you need to actually, get a space to have a physical in-person meeting, or, we have an event space, we have a podcast studio as well, and other services like that. So there's always a few different reasons people would be ringing us. But yeah, ultimately, I think the best way to get in contact is going to be over the phone, or through emailing ask@Republic of Work, because that, again, it goes straight to our staff. And we have a team of 6 here, so it's not some big corporate team that you're getting in contact with. You're getting in contact with one of the folks who you'd see here on a regular basis.
Yeah, I know there's other groups where it's like real, you know, big office spaces. I think it's like Iconic and stuff like that. They're big co-working spaces. Like, what I really liked about, like, okay, so for context, I've been down there a few times now, and it's actually a gorgeous space. As Andy said, like, the guys are very approachable. Everybody's really nice, and just, even like, I've definitely found a couple of 2 or 3 days that I've been down there, it's really nice to, like, have other people. Like, when you're used to being working by yourself, and especially in jobs now that are very, digital heavy, you don't need to be around people. But sometimes it's nice to essentially bounce ideas off of some clever people, and it's a perfect space for it. The lounge is gorgeous. Yeah, the event space is very very nice. So whenever the lads are putting on events, I'd highly recommend going down to them, because Andy, you do put on quite a few events, and that
We
probably
do
gets us
indeed.
on to the pre-accelerated, the startup showcase, the startup sprints, the accelerator programs, and everything else that comes out of that building. So where do you want to start? Actually, best question. I have an idea. What do I do?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you have any idea at any stage, you get in contact with me. So that's what I always say. It's like you don't need to try and impress me off the bat, if that makes sense. Like I've had many people kind of just even just members in the office space who might be remote working at the moment for corporate companies. And if anything pops into their head, it's always worth kind of fleshing it out or getting that initial impression off the likes of myself. But equally, I definitely wouldn't. I don't want people to get the impression that I'm the only one in the office who has kind of that knowledge on building up a startup. Like the good thing about Republic of Work is that there is myself, but equally there's my colleague Eshna who handles the kind of investment side of things. There's Frank who would have Frank's the CEO as well in Republic of Work. He'd have extensive experience working with startups, having built this office space to what it is today. But also, there's a lot of people who are in the office who have the startup themselves. So I suppose if you have an idea, and it's worth exploring, if you're in the local area, call in because you'll be able to talk to all those people I just mentioned there and probably a few more. Um, but yeah, ultimately, what I would always tell people is, if you have an idea, it has to be deeply rooted with a problem.
Yeah.
So it's something that's really interesting, I suppose, especially in the context of this European landscape and the Irish landscape when it comes to startups. It's that, in order to measure appetite for an idea, you have to be able to identify the problem that you're solving. And usually, if you can't do that, they're just there you won't be successful, which is it's kind of the harsh reality where 90% of startups fail, and it's actually known, I suppose, from the Scale Ireland startup survey that they run every year that kind of a lack of a problem is usually the main reason for it, and I've definitely seen people who've fallen into that trap as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So always worth coming to me. I'll give you that initial guidance as to how to prove there's a problem there, because again, assumptions kill. They always kill startups when you say, I know there's a problem. My neighbor Joe from down the road experiences this. You have to see, is it a big problem? And
Or is
if
it
it's a
just a
problem
Joe
that,
problem?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the thing.
No, like this is very, very true. And to be fair, again, just to go back on the leads, like Frank, Eshna, yourself, like all so helpful. Like I bumped into Frank and Eshna when we were up at the Dumb Tech Summit. I feel like it was almost one of those ones where they're like, "Are you following me?" Every building we went into was like, "Well, Frank is like, sir." And by the end, it was like we were in the pub in the evening, turned around, the boys behind me and Jimmy, and we turned around, they turned around, it was like, "Hey, hey." It's like our fifth passing today, but like they're so approachable. And as you said about the idea of a problem is fascinating, because like especially like given my line of work daily and this, that, like, people will always pop up to you and go, what if no, no, leave that alone, or you'll just be able to reference a company that you know from Germany or from the States. That it's like someone was like before. I remember this before not long ago. Someone was like, Joe, what if you could scan your payments through a ring? I was like, you mean like this company or this company or this company? It's not a problem that hasn't been fixed already.
Yeah.
Five companies that are of international recognition. So you need to do. I think when anybody starts a business or is starting with a startup, yeah, it's an idea, and an idea. What's it? Someone said to me, an idea without a plan is just a dream. So you need to be able to kind of come back and go, what am I solving? And most people don't do that. They just go, yeah, I want to make dog collars. Okay, what's your differentiator?
Yeah, and what's interesting as well is that we're at this stage, of kind of change in the kind of tech scene where things are moving very quickly. Like yourself, the introduction of artificial intelligence, and other buzzwords of the sort is definitely coming into play. And I think what's interesting is a lot of people think they're ahead of the curve
Mhm.
with their ideas sometimes, but because the world is moving so quickly, everyone sort of is sort of thinking of these innovative ideas at the same time. So all of a sudden you have kind of saturation where none would have existed only a couple of years ago. So it's interesting. People think when they're being innovative, it's kind of just their idea is a reflection of the sign of the times, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot with some of these AI driven startups. Now, that being said, I always say like if you're at an early stage, like the founding team is going to be hugely important. Like we wouldn't look at an idea and dismiss it because we've seen someone else do it. Because again, with that statistic around 90% of startups failing, you gotta kind of give everyone a shot when it comes to supporting them, especially those who have, of course, a different founding team, because that's what's going to make or break a startup at the earliest stages. Like it's kind of something we observed and something I definitely stand by. It's that if you have a crap idea and a great founding team, you'll probably find a way to make it work and you'll be successful. If you have a fantastic idea and you have a crap team behind it, it's gonna fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we look for as well when you approach us with an idea. Like we'll want to see what's the pedigree and what's the passion and the commitment behind that idea is going to be the deal breaker, really, not the
Yeah.
actual idea itself.
Yeah, it's finding those. It's that blend of the spark of insanity, passion for the idea, and an actual ability to take it home.
Yeah.
Great example of that on the biggest scale. So for anybody who's kind of thinking that through, is Apple and Sony. Sony are actually really, really good, and their mobile division a few years ago would have actually always been ahead of the game. So like they would have paired with Dolby Atmos for their sound systems, and then Apple come in and was like, "Yeah, so we bought Beats," and everybody's like, "Oh my god, they bought Beats!" And you just have Sony going, like, "Yeah, we've done that 5 years ago, lads." But because Apple have the razzmatazz, they have the dazzle, they have that, I suppose, charisma and the bright lights behind it. Sorry, don't get noticed. They have a great product, but the team behind them doesn't have that, I suppose, vavavoom, as Thierry Henry would put it, to actually show
Yeah.
it, I guess. And yeah, it's so true. And it's like I remember I've been at a few of these events and you see, these startup pitch competitions. And I always find it fascinating because you can see some people that have amazing ideas and you can write them off in 5 minutes because the person maybe isn't comfortable as a public speaker. And that's, for me, as you said, with the team, it comes down to knowing your strengths and weaknesses and going,
Mm.
I'm good at this, but I'm useless at this. So let me get someone on board who can cover my gaps and having complementary skills. Because, for example, I'm not a developer. I'll never be a developer. There's no point in me talking dev language because I just don't know.
Yeah, and look, that's one of the things we trying to get. But I definitely tried to encourage founders to adopt this. It's don't try to be every single role, especially if you're. So often when I'm engaging with founders, there could be instances where people are almost trying to like wow me with what they're working on, to the point where I feel like there's a small bit of bullshit. And so it's a case of, for example, like someone who might have a business development background, might talk about having the abilities to build their product in house.
Mhm.
Now, to be honest, I actually feel more confident in the founder if I heard that they couldn't do that,
Yeah.
for example, or else we'd have like maybe a developer who talks about the ability to build a robust business strategy. Now, I'd always approach, like whenever I'm told these kind of things, I do kind of flesh it out because I'm interested if people actually are a bit of a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
But often there's people who do just try to come across like they can get this over the line by themselves, when in reality we want to know your strengths and we want to know where you fall short as well. Because there's going to be no startup that can, well, there's no founder I've ever met who has it all. Yeah, at the very start. There's a few now who've very successful. They're exited 6 companies, and I'm like, okay, they do actually have it all
They know
from
what
their
they're doing.
experience of doing that. But the people who come to me at ideation stage and with that first initial idea, instantly I want to know where you fall short, because that's sort of where I'd come in and support.
Okay, so just on that, like, so again, a great example of that would have been the day we came down for the starter sprint. Everybody got their 1 minute to say, here's what I'm working on, here's what I know, here's what I don't know. And then everybody got like 10 minutes to walk around the room and almost pair up and pair off with, complementary skills. So I would have had a couple of people approach me with cool ideas and going, I don't know marketing. Can I, talk to you for a few minutes about what the hell I do in terms of marketing? And vice versa. I was buzzing around the room going, I heard someone say developer. Where are you? Where are you? I need to talk to you. And yeah, that's actually a really interesting one because it's definitely you see it all the time. You'll have someone on a power trip that vice grip like attachment to their idea, and that ego gets you nowhere.
Yeah, and plus as well, look, word travels fast, I suppose, amongst like in the ecosystem or the industry as a whole. It's a case of if you have a bad impression with someone, like you're like, or if you create a bad impression for someone, it's hugely damaging. Like it's something I'm even super conscious of if I'm talking to, let's say, other supports, or if I'm talking to Enterprise Ireland, like you have to make sure you understand who you're talking to, and kind of what value they can bring, and be honest with them, because if there is that lack of trust or a sense of dishonesty, people will be very apprehensive to actually connect you with others, and that's kind of the aim of the game when it comes to building a startup. It's to make those connections. So, funnily enough, like your character skills and your kind of ability to communicate, it's kind of like that's what will really get you the important opportunities. If you can't communicate, or if you can't even represent yourself in a strong manner, then
You have
you're going to
no.
be in trouble. Yeah.
Don't
And
bullshit the bullshitters. Is the
yeah,
vibe. Yeah.
that's the thing. And it's a case of like we've heard it all really when it comes to, kind of the lies and fids. But no, and I think as well, like when in reference to startup sprints, like um, the fact that people don't have all the skills they need to actually build out a startup, that's what made that aspect of that day really, really important. So that, that networking bit where you go around the room, you find other expertise, and you get them to work with you for the day. Um, because essentially that's one of the biggest struggles as well that startups deal with. It's finding additional team members or finding those complementary skills, because it's kind of an area where like no one's really shouting for the hills when they are looking to get involved in a startup. They, and especially if they're a developer, they can be a small bit more reserved, or they don't know how to approach it themselves. So there's no real clear cut solution or clear cut guidance I could give for someone finding a co-founder. So you have
Yeah.
to just set them up in a room, let them run around, and see what happens.
That is it, and that's what I found really fun. It was like everybody got their minute, and then it was like, "Here's the grenade, bye," and see
Yeah.
who can go find who. And I know the way I am. I, I'm a lot. Like this is me all day, every day. There's not an off switch. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So I need to work with people who can essentially leave me off the leash and go ahead, walk off, do your thing, and the golden retriever will be back when he's back, and I'll do this while he's gone. And like we say, like I work on this with Martin. Martin is one of the coolest people I ever got to meet. When we started this, I met him on a bus to Century. We were going playing six-a-side football. Like that is literally how I ended up on board with Goosed. Was Martin used to work. So Jimmy from our other project,
Yeah.
he hired me to replace Martin when Martin went to Dublin. I ended up in Dublin a year later, met Martin on a bus. He was like, "You know Jimmy?" I was like, "I know Jimmy." He's like, "I'm starting this thing." I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." And 10 years later, we're still making content about technology on the internet. And it works perfectly. I go off and do my mad things. Martin is the organizer, the SEO specialist, the guy who gets
Mm.
us all the traffic on the website. And yeah, the dynamic is perfect in that sense but that dynamic wouldn't work for everybody because
Yeah.
some people need someone who can go, these are your tasks. And this is matching personalities with people and your project and your passion and all. Da, 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 da.
Mm. But I'd say you do even notice that on Goose. It's like it's kind of when you're not working on something solo, there's kind of an accountability factor where you're like, oh shit, they know that I need to have this done, so I need to have it done, or
Yeah.
else I'm gonna hear about it. You know what I mean? And I think like again, like that's also completely the case when it comes to startups. Like the solo founders, sometimes if they experience burnout, you'll be able to see it from the outside, and I find that when you have teams, like they do motivate each other as well. Like the different founders amongst the team will keep each other in check, which is always going to be important. And I'd say it is good for this podcast. Like I'd say if Martin was no longer involved, it could get a bit disorganized at times. because it's hard to deal with as well by yourself.
It is because I suppose, especially for anybody going into a startup, I think there's this there's this notion that it's all, sunshine, rainbows, butterflies. I have an idea and I'm going to make 1 million a year. It's like, ah, uh, best of luck. It is stressful. It is tiring, and the amount of stuff that people don't understand from pitches, from you know, you're going, you feel like a beggar at times. You're putting your hand out, going, "Someone want to give me money." You're getting told 10 times no for a one yes. You're doing designs, you're doing roadmaps, you're doing business plans. People just, I think there's this like preconceived notion where it's like, I have this idea, and then magic.
Yeah, like, and no, look, that's completely true. There are people who have an idea and they kind of treat it as this golden key to a massive opportunity, and it's like, hold up, the idea is 2%, maybe 1.5% of the work. The other 98.5% of the work is going to be all the other factors that come into play. And there's a lot as well. Like, I suppose what's funny as well is that, like, I do. That's actually not funny, but like, I feel like a lot of people, their ambition exceeds their direction. This is a line I always use, and it's great. The ambition should be there. Like, if that's not there, you might as well pack up and go corporate. You know what I mean? With a startup, you need ambition, but if that ambition goes unchecked and they start going off the beaten track, you start to lose time, money, and then you really start to lose motivation, I suppose, when it's not working out for you.
Yeah.
Because like there is so much factors at play. So it's like, is your kind of pitch building skills up to scratch? Like, can you make a PowerPoint presentation? Can you deliver that with confidence? And give confidence to people listening to you that this is going to be huge. Can you speak to large amounts of customers, non-developers, manage your finances? Like, there's a whole lot of things involved with startups, but I think what's great about that is that there's massive learnings. So if you talk to any late stage founders or founders who've exited their companies, that they'll all tell you the same thing, that they are rich in experience and learnings, and some of them then go on to be rich in money. But if you're kind of getting into the startup game for financial reasons, or to think, oh, this could be so lucrative, I want to get it up and going, that's not going to happen. You have to go in there with a value for learning rather than value for money, because you won't hit it compared to maybe some of the traditional jobs. But that's okay as well. Like, again, you also won't learn half as much in any other industry than the likes of the startup industry.
Yeah, the only kind of field I've ever seen something similar in is marketing agencies.
Yeah,
Actually, because a lot of people come into a marketing agency, fresh out of college, or it's like their first job in it, and it's like, here's everything.
yeah,
And then the amount, like, I've said it to anybody I know who wants to get into marketing, is like, go get yourself a job in an agency. You can progress 4 years worth of value in a year, because you end up pulling all the different strings. And it's definitely something I've noticed from, like, I think we're 9 years interviewing startups here and talking to
my
different
God,
startups,
I didn't know that.
and you see it all of the time. It's like, it there is that piece of the puzzle where they're a bit mad, but they know what they're doing. And the ones that actually go places, you can see from, even from talking to them straight away, you can go, this isn't about money for you. This
Yeah,
is about, you're on a mission to do something. It's whether this is your own freedom to be your own boss and you just want something, small enough that you can manage it. You might have someone that is like, no, I love this idea, so this is my passion and I want to see where it goes.
mm,
I mean, it's like almost like a modernization, like, places like Republic of Work, and programs like the NDRC. They're beautiful, because I suppose we've moved away from the era of the madman in the shed going, I'm going to do this thing. And that's where years of innovation and invention came from, was, the room in the attic or the garage. And this is like modernizing it, bringing it together into a space where it's like, there's other people like you. Let's go figure it out.
yeah, and that's the great thing about, like, I think, like, Republic Work is great for it, but in reality, like, NDRC is bloody fantastic for that, in that regard, because no matter what program you kind of go into, and some of them, as you probably know, are more competitive than others, but if you're going to the likes of a founder weekend or a startup sprint, which they're kind of two events, they're fairly similar to each other. Startup sprint is a 1 day, Founder Weekend is like the whole weekend long event. So, and we actually condensed it down and called it Startup Sprint essentially for our Republic of Work version. And it worked out great because the biggest value is that you're going to have a lot of people in the room who are all at the same stage as you. And that's kind of what you want to try and do when you're going to the world of startups. It's to really find your tribe. Like there's a lot of communities within this kind of startup industry all over the world as well. I was going to say in Ireland, but sure, it stretches far beyond that. And it's finding people who are at the same stage as you and kind of working together then. And that's one thing that, yeah, again, like NDRC really employs. So at the likes of the startup sprint, you'll have everyone at ideation stage. You'll be talking to everyone about, how they engage with customers, what worked well for them. And then equally, you have the likes of the pre-accelerator where you're kind of at the stage where you're going to commit to this idea. You're kind of getting to the stage as well where you're starting to tell customers what you're actually working on. You're not keeping it as hidden or veiled. And yeah, you kind of you start moving into that first customer range, like launching a product, but you do it all together, and I think that's going to be one of the core aspects. And what's also great about NDRC, and I know this is also the case for the programs, but I can only speak on behalf of ourselves, is that we bring in people who are at that later stage. So let's say if you're at the founder weekend and you're at ideation stage, we'll bring in people who just finished up the pre-accelerator, who can remember what it's like to be at ideation because it's not too far down the line.
Yeah.
They can share their battle wounds, what didn't work for them, what worked for them. And equally, when you're in the pre-accelerator, you'll hear from founders who've raised 100, 200K in a pre-seed round, and they'll tell you the joys of going into fundraising, which that's sarcastic. It's an absolute nightmare. Yeah. No,
it's not fun.
scary. What's a quote I heard before now? I think it's like failure is never final and success is never success is never final and failure is never fatal. So that's kind of one of those things as well when it comes to fundraising. It's that
you're being told no.
You'll be told no a whole lot. And you'll also be told yes, yes, yes. And when it finally comes to signing the dotted line, it's a no. Then there'll be a few instances like that, but ultimately, we get people who are at a later stage, no matter to always kind of come back and help the people before them.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. Seeing programs like this is actually really good for that kind of that integration. And what is really cool about like the startup scene in Ireland is there's such a diverse range of ideas, and we're not Americans. we're a lot more helpful. I definitely could see it in like the American culture, and you see it in TV shows and nonsense like that. But even just having been over there before, it's like this is my idea. I'm not talking to you about this. Like this is mine. It's my baby. It's this. Whereas I've definitely noticed on the Irish startup scene, it's like you'll have, we've spoken a few times to the guys with our car with about their dementia product. We're in such different spaces. Like this is a tech blog. They're making dementia care. We're not the same, but we can talk to each other and kind of go, well, what are you doing there? And then give some advice or guidance and go, actually, there's a guy that you should talk to, and vice versa. It's like, oh, I actually went, I was at this event there a month ago. There's this fella that I know from this event. You should reach out to him, and you get a lot of the passing over of contacts and that real support. Like, so as you said, you have the founders weekend, you have the startup sprint, you have the pre-accelerated, the accelerator. So it's almost like a very nice tiered system to go through the funnel and go, right, here's where you start, tick that box. Now you're not here, tick that box. And you might skip the pre and go straight to the accelerator, or you might do the pre and then you tick that box, and then you might not need the accelerator and go straight to funding. Who knows? But there is that nice tiered of where are you in your journey, and let us support you get to the next stage.
Yeah, and just in relation there to the sort of connection, or what is it, like connection matching, or kind of referrals, I suppose, to other different supports. Like that's what makes Ireland so valuable. Like it's the fact that we're a small country here, and it actually is true that you're never like too far away from speaking to the right person. So I think a perfect example of this is like, I am not an expert in all things tech. I come from a marketing background. So I didn't, I didn't sort of go through college and learn about IoT and pharma and biochem, all these kind of different areas where there's certainly entrepreneurship kind of growing in those industries. Um, so like one of the core benefits or advantages of getting onto me is that I won't try and tell you what to do. I'll tell you who to go to. So that's kind of, you'll notice this in a lot of program centered roles, that the people delivering them, they often, the best skills they have is going to be people skills, and that's what I consider my best skill, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which is great. So I get to know the experts, I get to know those who can help you, and then you come to me and I'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's really super simple in the Irish context because it's so small.
Yeah.
Um, and we see it a lot as well because NDRC is built up by that 4 hub system.
Yes.
Um, where it's like, we'd also be connected with the big supports available in Dublin, or maybe some of the kind of private companies that are Kerry based as well, who are quite interested in getting involved in this entrepreneurial sector. um but yeah, so that's always, it's always super beneficial for looking for new connections, I suppose,
Yeah.
this Irish landscape.
Yeah. No, it is. It's that. Do you know what? It's the Irishness. It's that thing of. I sure look like I know a lad,
Come
and
here to me. Come here
yeah,
to me. Don't I know your aunt? It's like, oh,
it's the network of Irish nannies.
yeah,
It's like what was it? They have that saying, the 6 degrees of separation. That
mm,
don't exist here. You're only ever 2 steps. I
yeah,
remember a couple of years ago, I was abroad and I was gowl acting. I'm not even going. I was gowl acting. I was off away on a good holiday.
yeah,
I came home. My mother was like, "What you get up to? Like, what you know?" It's like, "Oh, one of her mates was on the fucking beach when I was with my bag of canes." It's like, I was like, "I am thousands of miles away, and I still got caught." It's like,
yeah,
but that's that Irish thing. Like, I remember last year I was in Rio, and people didn't believe me. It was like, "Ireland's tiny." Like, "What you mean?" I was like, "I'm going to meet someone I know over the next 3 days, three,
oh
four
yeah,
days, or whatever."
oh yeah,
Within about 2 hours, there was a voice, "Johnny Bud." I was, seriously? Fella lives 10 minutes down the road, and I found him in Brazil quicker than I'd find him down the road.
yeah. Sure, I was the same, and like, as in, I was over in Bulgaria. Oh no, sorry, Budapest. I was over in Budapest at a music festival, and sure, who was standing next to me in the crowd but someone who I had worked with previously.
Yeah,
I'd only seen them the week prior. Didn't even know they were actually going to be there. Oh, the Irish are everywhere. Like, yeah, and there's always a connection. Like, especially if you go down around Kerry. And I don't know if you've been down to Kerry much, John, but like, they always do it. You'll kick off a conversation by saying, "Don't I know your mother's best friend's dog's minder?" And
yeah.
then
It's
it's
like,
like,
what's the
yeah,
chain here?
yeah, that's the thing. Oh, they can link the chain like they've been preparing it before even meeting.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Um,
It's actually beautiful.
yeah,
Like I love the way the tech landscape is. Like, definitely the tech landscape in Ireland has gone. I think over the last 3 4 years, maybe it's a COVID thing that people now. It's like maybe it's companies asking for people to come back to offices. Maybe I don't know what it is that changed something, but definitely
mm,
since COVID, the rise of startups has been fucking insane.
oh
Like
yeah,
places like yourself have been like what is it, Dog Patch, Republic Work. You've
yeah.
got the RDI hub in Kerry. You've got
And then
there's
there's
another one, Clonmel,
Portershed,
Portishead,
Portershed
Galway.
and Galway. Yeah,
That's the one. Like that's three new infrastructures in what, 5 years approximately. Yes.
yeah, that's the thing. And I suppose as well, it's more around, yeah, the recognition, because RDI Hub, I think, is the newest of
Yeah.
the lot of them. I know Republic of Work, they were always startup centric, but we got the new rebranding, and we all only got the NDRC deal, or like the delivering the NDRC. That was only 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does end up being a bit of a game changer, and it's something I definitely noticed during lockdown. So I actually would have started my journey in RDI Hub. So I worked there for 2 years,
Nice.
starting off on an internship. And to be honest, when I went in there, I didn't know what a startup was or what a founder was. Like, I was in the mind of, I'll go into some big corporate job in a marketing department. Like, that was my intentions.
Yeah.
Um, and either way, I ended up getting an internship in RDI Hub. Learned about all things startups, because when we first started delivering this NDRC program, I suppose there was a big learning there was a learning factor I had to catch up with before kind of doing all this marketing material.
Yeah.
But it really worked out in the end. But I did get to see that transformation of, a massive amount of people doing startups.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's super interesting. Like I think a lot of the colleges and universities as well in Ireland really promote it now.
They do.
And I think as well one of the biggest factors, and I was only talking about this the other day, is the success stories that are coming out about startups. Like I think back in the, and I don't want to say back in the day because I'm a young guy, but
Back
you know,
in my day. I'm allowed to say that.
you can say that now, John. So back in your day, John, I reckon it was one of those things where if you said you were going to go off and do your own company, you probably get a bit of a slap on the wrist saying, "Don't be doing that now. Go into a proper job." But these days, people don't really know what a proper job is. With with how digitized the world has become, you can make money through so much different means. So now people they've reconsidered it rather than just closing their options to the literally 8 or 9 jobs that most people chose from, kind of 10, 15 years ago.
It's so true. It's like, remember How I Met Your Mother, Barney, or Friends, Chandler. It's like, what you do? I feel like that's like the type of jobs that you're in now. Because like I know a lot of my mates that like work in factory jobs and stuff, and great jobs. But if they go, what the fuck do you actually do? I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no point in even trying to describe it. It's like everything, nothing, here, there, it's fine.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
thing. Like, because and there still is a large portion of the population who aren't fully like they haven't fully adopted this new way of working, and they just don't really get it, and it confuses them. And I get that, you know what I mean. I understand why it's confusing, but it's interesting. Like we have this ability now to really hustle beyond the traditional means of making money, and it's
yeah,
fantastic. Like as in, I think even outside of the context of startups, like you can make money through content creation,
yeah,
completely built by your own kind of work and your own your own platform. Like and we're even noticing in the startup world there's a lot of new products coming out that allow for more dynamic ways of making money as well.
yeah,
Like there's going to be new AI tools that will make it easier for people to make video content and make it easier as well for kind of understanding the skill gap that could be there for some of the more innovative or entrepreneurial kind of hustles, if that makes
yeah.
sense. If you want to
It
go into
does.
drop shipping, it got easier. You know what I mean? So there's kind of different things like that.
No, it's so true. Like what was it? Where was I going with this? Yeah, I was like, I remember like a few years ago, like even the idea of doing a podcast. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why do you have a microphone in your like? What's all this? And it's like
Yeah,
the only way you had the ability to do this content, even maybe 6, 7 years ago, was working radio. Like
yeah,
that's how quickly the podcast space has blown up. Which means, like, I have an opinion that people can listen to. You have an opinion that people can listen to if they so wish to do so.
yeah,
But, so that voice that people had used to, I suppose, not have means that there's so much more options. So if you are thinking of doing a startup, you have so many ways to communicate it to the world. Like whether
yeah,
that is, going live on a TikTok, whether that is, as you said, content creators. YouTube, this was going to age me so much. YouTube was launched in 2005.
yeah. Oh my god.
I was in secondary school.
Yeah. Do you remember
So
using it when it first came out?
I do, and I remember some of the videos that we would have watched, and the likes of your salad fingers and that
Oh
era.
yeah, Ray William Johnson.
Yeah,
I,
that
I, I
era
still
of
during the
the
first like
2000s.
yeah, I wouldn't say the first iteration of YouTube. I think like in its earliest days, though, it was so funny how different it used to be
Yeah,
to what it's become now. It's like like never mind the actual launching of YouTube. It's the development of what YouTube is now is just madness. Like as in you see these kind of different like groups on YouTube, the likes of the Sidemen, for example, and they're smashing it in terms of viewership
yeah,
compared to traditional media. So it's interesting. It's there's definitely that ability to become more independent, and I think as well with that, like there's a lot of different things that have become a bit easier than they were, back in the day. Like for example, now like customer discovery has become super simple. Just jump on your laptop and talk to people online.
Yeah,
You'll be able to gather some information. Um, so yeah, like the development of 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 the digital world has really enhanced everything.
no, really
And
good.
it's I think it's awesome as well. You know.
Yeah, and definitely like even like this time last year when we were poking around with our ideas, wouldn't have known about the likes of your programs. Like
Yeah.
Google searching, startup supports and stuff like that, and then these things pop up, and you end up down a rabbit hole. And it's much better to go down a productive rabbit hole than going down, 20 videos deep of cat videos on TikTok. But here we are. We still do that too. Doom
Mm.
scrolling is a wonderful thing. But anyway, back to the programs. So yeah, we know what the startup weekend looks like. The founder weekend. What does the pre like? So right, I now have an idea. I know there's a problem. I know that there's a space for my product. What happens in the pre-accelerator? Or one, how'd you get on it? Two, what happens then when I'm there?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose we'll kick off with what happens when you are on it. So we'll get a bit of excitement before we talk about that application then.
Yeah, good idea.
So basically when you're on the pre-accelerator, essentially you're taken through 6 core modules of sort of content. So that would include, and these aren't in order, I probably haven't gotten every title right, but it'll be kicking off with problem and customer, maybe talking about how to perfect your pitch or creating that investor ready pitch. There'll be one around what metrics you should be gathering, because when you're kind of going through the pre-accelerator, you should kind of have your head thinking about investment, and you don't want your numbers all over the place, and you want to make sure that you understand the metrics that are important to communicating your value. And then so there's going to be 6 of those kind of type of modules that will really help your startup's development in all I suppose areas.
Yeah.
And that all culminates then in a showcase day. So what's super interesting about the showcase day is that we'll definitely make sure that you're prepared to actually deliver or communicate your startup in the form of a pitch.
Yep.
And then what my job is to get very important people in the room. So I'll try, for example, getting in different investors, maybe different big players in the startup game, I suppose, in Ireland. Getting people who are more further along their journey, who can gain interest in what you're working on, and kind of help you through that as well. But ultimately, my job at the end of the pre-accelerator is to create a high value room, and your job is to create a high value pitch, and then both of them can complement one another for some beautiful outcomes.
Perfect.
But ultimately, it's gonna help you level up your startup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the founder weekend is to make sure it's worth exploring in the first place. You'll soon find out if it's not, through some of the um, trials and tribulations we set out during that founder weekend and startup sprint.
Mhm.
But then the pre-accelerator is all about leveling up, and the accelerator then is like you have to have global ambition. Like the accelerator is bloody tough to get on, and that's okay as well. Um, like the accelerator actually isn't. It's not for everyone. But those who do go on it, like they demonstrate that they are globally scalable. That's going to be a huge factor really when it comes to that accelerator, because there's with the accelerator there's money on the line. Really, it's like you get 100 grand in investment, so that becomes super important. But going back to the pre-accelerator and the actual how do you get on it, well, the first step you do is reach out to me or any of the other kind of leads around the country. So there's 4 of us at the moment. There's my colleague Gerard Carney in RDI Hub, there's Deshant Singh in Portishead, and then there's Joe Gorman in Dogpatch Labs. So we're the sort of 3 sort of program leads for our respective regions. So it's always worth having a chat with us, if you are interested in the pre-accelerator, just to gauge if it's right for you, to kind of get some tips around the application, and get a bit of guidance, I suppose, ahead of that. And then it is just an application process where it shouldn't take you too long. Like, to be honest, there's nothing that makes us sigh more than when we see a really, really, really long application. The best thing you can do is just be to the point. So, like, we'll ask you, what's the problem you're solving? And some people write a chapter of a book, and really, the thing with startups is that we want to see how clearly you can communicate each aspect of your startup
Mhm.
as succinctly as possible. So, I'm going to want to hear what problem you're solving in 2 or 3 lines and similar to the solution you're building. Um, and then there are some other questions around, for example, what tractions you have so far, and what, oh yeah, like why you the right founding team. Um, so there's different questions like that, and ultimately it's a bit of a competitive process where we essentially, you know, we usually get in around 80 plus applications. We'll screen those applications in a very unbiased way. We have, typically kind of multiple people kind of looking after or kind of assessing those applications,
Yeah.
and we'll thin that down to 40. We'll bring all 40 startups to an interview just to get to know them a bit more. And then we'll choose 20 then to actually be on the final cohort.
Mm.
Now, what is interesting is that we don't want to come across like we're this all exclusive club of macho startups.
Mm.
Typically, if you're on the pre accelerator, it's because you're at the right stage to be on the pre accelerator. And if you don't get on the pre accelerator, there's probably a very tangible reason. It's not just it's not a load of snobby high ups saying, I don't believe in your idea. It's usually centered around something that you can do to improve for the next time around. Because that becomes a huge kind of thing that I love. Well, I need to communicate that, because when people don't get on this program, I don't want people thinking that we have ill faith in themselves or in what they're working on. But you can only do the pre-accelerator once. Like, we won't let you back on for another idea, or
Yeah.
we won't let you cancel halfway through and do it at a later date when you realize it's not for you right now.
Yeah.
Well, you can obviously cancel, but we won't.
You're not coming back.
My phone stopped working for a second. Yeah, you can obviously cancel, but you're not coming back. You know what I mean? So we always make sure that the pre-accelerator you're on is one that you should be on, especially because it runs 4 times a year. So there's no urgency to jump on the pre-accelerator. If you're not at the right stage, you're going to waste your time, and you're going to waste that valuable opportunity that I communicated at that showcase day. When I bring in all the great people that you can speak to after you pitch your startup. If you're at an early stage, then a lot of those connections they're gonna be fairly fruitless,
Yeah.
and that's the last thing you want.
Yeah.
So it's
You
interesting. So ultimately, it's approach one of the program leads first, put in an application. Typically, you can edit your application as well, so you can shoot us another message and say, "Can I have a bit of feedback or a bit of direction? Have I forgotten anything here?" Um,
That was something I was actually going to mention because you actually offer office hours, let's say. So,
yeah,
like when somebody does, fill in an application, you're able to ping the lads and kind of go, "Would you mind having a look at that and kind of giving me some, you know, I'm not asking you to tell me if my idea is great or shit, but is there anything obvious that I'm missing from the application that I'm not touching on?" And that could be anything from, you know, do you have social media accounts set up? Do you actually have followers? Are you posting out to the public? Do you have money? You know,
mm,
these are all questions that,
yeah.
if someone's going, especially, it's definitely one of those things that not everybody has actually, been in that kind of world before. So they go, "What do you mean by having attraction?" It's like, does anybody want that?
Yeah, that's the thing, and I suppose as well, it's like and we've seen it a lot where, and the traction question is a good one. It's one I was going to touch on. It's um so some people they simply put in that answer like, I have no traction, and that's very dangerous, because at that stage it means that you are at you have the ideas in your head, and usually people sometimes can get mistaken. A good example is, they think that traction is simply just revenue,
Yeah.
but often there will be pre-revenue startups on the pre-accelerator program, and ultimately, I suppose you're gonna have to kind of communicate or measure your pre-revenue traction. So that's gonna be, we want to know how much customers you've spoken with, or potential customers. We're gonna want to know, have you sort of made a pitch for this, or have you kind of made a holding page, a website, or something along those lines? Any kind of significant milestone. But ultimately, if you're pre-revenue, the most valuable form of traction is, how are you communicating with your potential customers?
Mm.
If we see people, 3 weeks into having an idea, speaking, and they've spoken to 10 customers and they documented that interaction, that's hugely valuable. Like, we'll be keeping our eyes on them then,
Yeah, that's something you
Uh,
got up
be-
and done the
yeah,
work.
because it's funny how, because there is a lot of startups who are afraid to speak to their potential customers, and it's
Hilarious.
bloody dangerous, because once you launch a product, that's what you're going to have to do, and you can't outsource that. Like, if you're a founder and you're outsourcing the customer engagement from the get-go, that's a huge warning flag for any, even beyond NDRC, like any kind of program, like any mentor. They'll all pointed out that you need to talk to your customers yourself, because there's no person should be a better salesperson for your startup than the founder who started it themselves.
Yeah, you're the person who's passionate about this. If you can't convince someone that it's a good idea,
That's the
then
thing.
you're not in the right space. That is very funny though, because it's definitely one of those things of people will have that idea of I know best, I know better. The only exception I've ever heard of that is the invention of the car. That is the
Yeah,
only exception where it's like, well, if I asked people what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. Like, yeah, how many other inventions, how many other companies, how many things have been built, how far we've come as a world since then, and everybody else has had to go to the customers
yeah.
and go, so
And I think as well, like, sometimes in the pursuit of innovation, sometimes people think that having no competition is like their strategic advantage, and sometimes this can be the case. Very rarely, but like, usually we're very afraid if you say you have zero competition, because we're gonna want to know why,
we're in
or
2024, someone's thought of it, why haven't they done it?
yeah. So and usually if people say I don't have any competition, it's going to be, you either don't know your competition and you should, or there's not really a solution that's necessary, because if there's a needed solution, there's going to be one. The world's big, you know what I mean? And competition exists on a global level. Um, so it's always funny when I hear people say we have zero competition, and I think as well, some people do forget to explore that indirect competition. So, like, for example, a competition for Mercedes um, could be public transport in an indirect way. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
they're not quite the same,
No, but
and it's a far stretch,
that
but
makes sense. It's like if take a car, yeah, car manufacturer is a great example. If you were to say Mercedes, who's your competition? Somebody's automatic. You go BMW. It's like,
or yeah, or a bike. You know what I mean? The solution is going from A to B. It's not driving. Like, driving is not the solution. It's the ability to go from A to B.
yeah.
So you have to think of, what is the solution that will get me from A to B? A bike. You know what I mean? A bike could be the competition of
And then you add
BMW.
your layers onto and go, well,
So
I want to
that's
get
the
there
thing. So,
quickly. I want to get
yeah,
there eco-friendly. I want to go, and then depending on what avenues you want to go, there's always someone. And the car's a
that's
brilliant example because you can go, yeah, well, what does that look like in 5 years? Oh, jetpack. Like, is it though? It's
yeah.
like, is what you're building now going to be displaced? Like,
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's like, and I feel like people definitely do forget that. Like that, when you analyze anything, like, you got to step away from your product. You know what I mean? So when I say, like, what's your competition? It's not who's building the same product as you. It's who's solving the same problem as you. So it's always funny. I always make sure that.
I really like that line.
Yeah, I'm telling you that. But
Really like that line.
and look,
That's the tagline.
yeah, I'm telling you, it's my mantra though as well. It's separating product and problem,
Yeah,
because you'll see it often as well, especially at the earlier stages, and it's people focusing on their product, and it's like, oh, take a break, focus on the problem,
yeah,
because the product, and people get bored shitless as well when they hear too much about the product, because I think that's going to be one of the areas that startups soon they begin to realize when they hear other people's startups. It's that no one's going to care about your product as much as you do, and that's okay. Like, if I build a product, you best believe it'll be my baby,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'll understand that it won't be anyone else's, even if I wanted it to be, and that's, whereas a problem is one that people can really relate to,
Yeah.
where people
I've
feel
definitely
like can
seen that.
share it.
I've 100%
Owning a
seen that with
product
the
is not.
fantasy football game. I was saying I've definitely
Yeah,
seen that with the fantasy football game. Like I've shown my build site to like my mates, and then they're like, bro, that's ugly as fuck. I'm like, I know. It's like it's not supposed to be pretty.
Yeah,
Look
and that's
past
the
it.
thing. So, and let's use that as an example real quick as well. So
Yeah,
let's say like so we're talking about fantasy football here. So imagine if you approached me and you told me about all the fancy features and gadgets and things you have with your startup. I'll still probably give you the same kind of. I'll be, oh yeah, whoa, oh my
yeah,
god, I can't believe that. Now in my head, I'll be thinking,
yeah,
oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah.
But if you started to tell me the inefficiencies or the problem with fantasy football right now and I played, I'd be so passionate with joining you, you
Yeah.
know? Like I'd be like, yeah, everyone does have the same team. You know, and I feel like I'd be relating
Everybody,
with
obviously, everybody has Holland. The man's a cheat code. It's
yeah.
like cool.
And like without even talking about your product, you'd have me sold on a solution,
Yeah.
you know? So that's it, it's always gonna be the important part.
That is actually a really good way to actually take it. It's like even when you're talking to people about your product, it's not about, as you said, nobody gives a fuck what it looks like. Well, they do obviously come the finished product, but in
Yeah.
terms of I'm making waterproof socks, like that's great, buddy. Why?
Yeah, that's the
Like,
thing. Don't talk about your waterproof socks. Talk about your crappy experience of getting
slipping in a swimming pool or something.
yes, yeah, you know what I mean. Talk about the reason that you thought of the socks in the first place, you
Yeah,
know?
that's what
Uh
people are interested in. That's what people care about. And it's definitely it like oh my god, it's yeah, you probably have all of that experience where somebody will prattle on for an hour and go, yeah, but I this and I can do this. And it's like that's wonderful. You're
yeah.
passionate about it, but you're doing what now?
And I don't blame them as well. Like, see, the thing is, it's like before I kind of got into this world, I'd probably do the same thing,
Hmm.
or a lot of people they probably think that they wouldn't fall into that trap. They think, oh, I know not to bore people with my product. But when you're so involved in it, it can just be a subconscious or like very natural thing to happen. Where, like, if I told you, what are the benefits of your startup? You'd go on to tell me the features. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Um, you wouldn't. Whereas I find a lot of the time when you communicate value, you got to strip it down to the emotional aspect of things.
yeah,
Problem makes you sad. Solution makes you happy. You know what I mean? And it's the
yeah,
product is what will get you there. But it's funny, and I don't blame people for blabbing on about their features. Even though it's definitely something I call out and I tell people stop, but I understand as well, you know.
yeah. And look, at the end of the day, the reason why people do these things is because you're passionate about it. So be passionate about it. And like
Yeah,
we're nearly up on time, so I will ask you about what the accelerator program is, and basically at that point. I assume that's the point when when you get into the accelerator, you're ready to take money. When you finish the accelerator, you're ready to take over the world. I assume that's
yeah. Well, to be
the
honest, when you get into the accelerator, you probably are already generating money. You probably have already taken in money, um, and you're probably looking to expand into other parts of the world already. You know what I mean? Like the accelerator program it's really for people who are up and running already. They have a product that it's fully launched. Typically, like there's always some exceptions if something is particularly complex or if there's huge potential there. But ultimately, the ball will certainly have been rolling for a long time if you're on the accelerator. Uh, because with that program, you get the 100 grand in sort of a safe
yeah,
agreement, um, and essentially, you're kind of it's all run from Dogpatch Labs in Dublin. So a lot of it, it's not all in person. A lot of it is in person though,
yeah,
um, and it's fairly full on. So in the pre-accelerator, we have 20 startups, which is fantastic. We have each sort of program lead really supporting 5 startups at a time. In the accelerator, there's 7 startups go through, and there's probably there's 5 or 6 people whose job it is to focus on your supports every single day. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Um, and of course they focus on recruitment for the next one and whatnot. But ultimately, there's 5 people who are at your beck and call when it
Yeah.
comes to
7 businesses, five
getting the next
dedicated
ones.
supports. Like that's
Yeah,
almost like you have somebody as it's as close to having somebody assigned to be your business buddy.
yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Like, as in, like, imagine the ability to walk into a room, sit down at a table of 5 other individuals who are all there to focus specifically on what you're working on. Like it creates absolute transformation in a startup,
Yeah.
which is fantastic as well. Like I think, like the way I kind of say it is like
Must be
once you
really
get to
hard.
accelerator stage, you'll begin to value what you get out of the accelerator beyond the actual 100K. So like I typically know startups aren't suitable for the accelerator if they're applying for the accelerator for the investments alone, you know?
Yeah.
Like if they think that that is their ultimate, that is why they want to be on the accelerator is for the money, then I'm like, okay, you're too early if that's the reason, because
Yeah.
there's huge value um in the actual expertise behind the supports, rather than just the kind of investment itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an amazing thing. Like I actually encourage any and all to really come up to the one of the showcase days. So similar to the pre-accelerator when I said we'll have you pitch your idea, that happens as well for the accelerator, but on a small bit of a larger scale, maybe
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 times the size in terms of an audience. And I'm
Wait, hold on. So you're saying there's a captive audience that has to listen to me?
oh yes,
Sign me up.
yeah. Yeah, and look, we'll make sure they do. We'll give them every reason to.
Uh,
But the accelerator, I'm telling you, it's a motivating event. Like
yeah.
I came out of it because the accelerator runs twice a year, so they would have had their showcase day. I think I think they would have had one in maybe March.
Yeah, it
I
wasn't
could
so
be
long
completely
ago. I
wrong.
remember. I
This year has
remember
been chaotic,
seeing
but
bits of it up online on LinkedIn
yeah,
and stuff.
but I'm telling you though, like I felt absolutely inspired coming out of that
Yeah.
showcase, because you see as well, like you see the status being communicated so perfectly. Like you could invite in a 6-year-old in the room and they'd be able to explain back to you what the startup does, because their pitching skills at that stage and the coaching they would have gotten for pitching is just unbelievable. So there's actually a fantastic pitching coach called Ginny Radmo, and she's fantastic when it comes to communication. Like she's definitely worth following in terms of kind of leveling up your pitching skills. Hugely influential, and she often does support the NDRC crew and the startups coming through our programs. But um, the accelerator day is one. The showcase day is one. I encourage everyone to go to.
It must be really a really nice. I can only imagine, like, for a role like yours, it must be really nice when you see a business or even something that you remember from like 2 years ago being at the ideation stage, and then you see something on like business post 2 years down the track, and you're like, oh, nice.
Yeah, and look, a great story of that, and it could be the area we finish this off with is going to be around a startup called Trust App.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but they are massively successful. Anyways, they actually just closed a 5.5 million Series A round,
Right.
having previously closed a 3.4 million pre-seed round.
This
Uh,
all sounds like fucking monopoly money. Like when you're just throwing
I
out five
know.
and a half million here, three in a minute.
But I'm telling you, so Trust App is founded by Connor Lydon, and he's actually a Cork man himself. And he's the perfect example of a startup that we saw from an early stage, who showed huge promise, and now he's just an absolute inspiration for everyone in this building. We actually only saw him the last day, but I'll quickly just tell you his story in terms
Yeah.
of a founder's journey. So he would have kicked off with studying UCC. He thought of this idea, and he went to the UCC Ignite program to really focus on developing out this idea. See, is it worth building out?
Yeah.
Um, so then he went through the Ignite program. He pitched at their showcase day in UCC, and he went on to get membership in Republic of Work. So this is a high level as well. He did a lot in between all those little bits.
Yeah.
But he got membership in Republic of Work. He worked there for roughly 3 years, and these days now, like he has an office. He does have an office, I believe, in New York, in Cork. But he's an absolute inspiration when it comes to a young founder getting an idea, rolling with it, and being hugely successful. Now, there's a ton of hardship along the way. There's probably a few setbacks that I'm not even aware of, like every startup. But no, he's a fantastic individual to look up to when it comes to starting from an idea, and in a few years it could be life changing. for both your customers and yourself. Like the kind of goal really is that you're kind of changing lives with what you're building here.
Yeah, yeah. Not playing a football game.
No, your one's good as well. You'll be
Yeah,
changing the lives of many
yeah.
for fancy football.
We'll make a nice game.
Okay,
So, last question, I'll leave you on this.
perfect.
One top tip and two big pitfalls for somebody who wants to get into making a startup.
Okay, so let's see. Top tip is going to be don't be afraid of talking to your customer, and if you are, the startup world probably isn't for you. Um, and look, it's a scary thing. Like I know it myself. But there's no reason not to talk to your potential customers. Sure, I know myself. Like I support startups. I talk to startups all the time. I reach out to them shamelessly on LinkedIn. I'm one of those guys who will send a cold email or a cold message on LinkedIn to say, "Come here to me. Let's have a chat." You should be doing that with your customers. Because ultimately, if you can prove to us that you're engaged with the people you're hoping to support, then we'll support you because we see that as being very genuine when it comes to building out a startup. The biggest pitfalls is going to be so when you're doing your MVP, your minimum viable product, if you outsource that and you spend 15 grand building it, that's usually a big no-no. So we want to see the literal minimum viable product. So what can you build to make this to prove that this is going to work? Like a good example is like you could use Excel, Gmail, and some other tool like the super simple, easy, free tools,
Yeah,
or Google Sheets is free, anyways. Um, and you can do that to. It would be very clunky, very difficult from internally for yourself, but externally, then you could still provide that experience to the customer.
yeah,
They can tell you, what they'd love to see as this kind of develops out.
yeah,
So yeah, it's putting a lot of money into an MVP that would probably um, need to be changed and need to be rejigged anyways.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Go
and
dangerous for the finishing shot,
yeah,
basically.
and in fairness, there are some startups that like as in look there are some niche startups that they do require a lot of that initial funding. Like 15 isn't really a lot in the grand scheme of things. But it's kind of the SaaS startups who when you can achieve something simply, do it simply. You know what I mean? And then another pitfall I would say is um, weirdly enough, it's kind of a startup is who's not trustworthy enough. I think is a huge problem because and it's something I just kind of noticed recently. If you're very apprehensive to share your idea on the off chance that someone will steal it, don't worry because it's already been done before, and you can probably it will probably look like you stole it off someone else in our eyes, but we know that that's not the case.
Yeah,
When it comes to a startup idea, it's definitely been done before. It's so I don't think I've ever seen a startup that hasn't never been done before,
mm,
which is interesting. Or an idea, sorry, an idea that's never been thought of before. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, and again, it's like I said before, that's 1.5% of the work. If that's all it takes to topple you is someone else trying to build it at the same time, um, I'd be very apprehensive. Like
yeah,
the best thing you can do is look for connections, like look to spread the word on what you're doing to people who can support you. Because if you start closing doors, if you start being too secretive, I suppose to these kind of support networks around you, you're not going to make any new connections that are going to be highly valuable, and that's going to be a huge issue in terms of your development.
that makes no sense. It's just like I have this idea. Tell me about it. No, but give me the
Yeah,
money. Trust me, bro. It's like,
yeah, and
that's
I get it as well in a sense. It's people want to be protective of their idea, but it's really self-destructive, in
way
my
that you can do
opinion.
both. Like,
Yeah,
like for example, we'll use Arthur as an example. We'll tell you what we're doing. Haven't given you, but have at no point in time have you seen the point system.
yeah.
Do you know what I
That's
mean?
the thing. It's because once you start developing, there does need to be obviously a level of privacy in terms of what you're doing. But if you're at that idea stage and if you're really just kicking off, uh, don't worry about secrets right now. Like, isn't that'll come over time when you really have something going. But right now you need to give yourself every possible chance of success, and that's going to start with the right connections. If it starts with you telling people to keep a ton of secrets, it's going to look bad. Like, I never want to be the holder of someone else's secrets in my profession.
Yeah.
That's not what I look for, you know.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm talking to startups at an early stage. I understand the later stage, but you know, I'm looking to make new connections for you here. You know, not looking to confide in
I
you.
don't want your idea. I'm here to help you facilitate your idea. So
That's it.
open your mouth and tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that those are my two big setbacks, and that's my biggest
I like that.
biggest win, I think.
I like that. So, right, if anybody is looking to get involved in the program or is looking for space at the Republic of Work, where's the best place to contact you?
Best place to contact me is going to be LinkedIn. So that is at Andy McManagan. It's very good. No one else has my last name outside of my family, so you'll definitely find me. Or what you can do is you can go to republicofwork.com. You can put a message into our little ask window there. You can type us up on Google and ring the number that shows up. We'll definitely answer with a bright, bubbly tone. How else can you get in contact? NDRC.ie. That's
Yeah.
always going to be a good one as well. And when you go to that website, you can actually book in some time with me for a virtual call over Zoom. But look, I can promise you the door is never closed. It's always open, no matter who you are, what stage you're at. We'll always want to speak. You know.
Love that. I don't think I have any other questions, and that's a brilliant and nice plug to end it on. So, from my side, obviously, we are everywhere, all of the time, always. So, this is on YouTube now. We are on Spotify, so you'll get the audio and video there. So, if you want to actually watch our beautiful faces while we talk about startups, that is also available. We're actually the only social platform we're not on is the one formerly known as Twitter. So we're on TikTok. That's Marty at Goosed. We're on Instagram, Goosed_e. We're Facebook at Goosed. Go check out Goose. We have a whole pile of new content after going up there over the last couple of weeks, and we have a whole pile of new content going up there. My favorite piece that is up there now is Martin's new phone bill calculator. So if you're actually in the market for a new phone, you can actually see how you can get down the costs between looking at contract options and whether that is SIM only or buying phones refurbed and stuff like that is better options for you. So that's a really cool tool that's on the site and could be a good option for anybody who's looking to save a few quid on a phone. So yeah, good night, good morning, goodbye, good evening, good day. I don't know. Depending on when you're listening to this, have a good one. So thank you very much and bye.